Yeah, it happened again. First a chassis engine, and now this. What I would describe as unsanctioned paint jobs have been applied to two CSX locomotives in northwest Georgia this year. And this one honors the RF&P. The Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac Railroad had a system stretching a little more than 110 miles connecting Richmond, Virginia with Washington, D.C. It was what's called a bridge line and moved the traffic of larger railroads between those cities, linking north and south. That was the company's slogan. The railroad would eventually be absorbed into CSX in 1991. And today, we find this locomotive outside of Quarry in Rockmart, Georgia, a long way from its home rails in Virginia. Of course, the paint that now adorns its nose isn't actually supposed to be there. But it's hard to call it graffiti or an act of vandalism. To me, it looks like it was applied at the paint shop or at the factory. But so far, no one has taken credit for it. So one quick note here is that I wish I could have gotten this thing in better light, but sometimes you have to work with the conditions you're given. Now, I'm not a professional painter, but this looks like quality work, and what makes it even more special is the fact that this engine, CSX 6394, did once work for the RF&P. It's a GP40-2 built in 1972 by General Motors' Locomotive division. As far as I can tell, after a little online research, this is what the front of this locomotive would have looked like during the final days of the RF&P. Well, aside from a little artistic liberty taken with the CSX flare down here. Okay, time for a comparison. Here's an RF&P diesel leading some chassis engines back in 1987. The logo on the nose matches what we see now on CSX 6394. Going back to 1969, these locomotives have a slightly different iteration of the RF&P logo. And there's no logo on the nose here. Believe it or not, we do have an old RF&P locomotive in Georgia, or at least I hope it's still around. I shot this footage on the Hartwell Railroad back in 2021. Its paint needs a little work. I wonder if there's anyone out there who could handle a job like this. Okay, I'm just kidding. Meanwhile, this engine is fresh out of the paint shop. If you didn't know, CSX now has heritage locomotives honoring several of its predecessor railroads. The company has shown them off in various promotional videos. And one major takeaway from all of those videos is that the CSX employees who paint these things down in Waycross, Georgia, take a whole lot of pride in what they do, and they do a great job. Rail fans have been asking the company to do this for a long time, but there have been some complaints about the design on the heritage units. Some folks don't like that the entire locomotive isn't covered in the colors of the predecessor railroad. You can see the CSX paint scheme is still present on about a fourth of the engine. Obviously, the opposite has happened out here. Now, I shot this video on November 29th, 2023, and I think this engine was painted a few days before that, although I can't be 100% sure. So, you may remember back in August of 2023 when this engine appeared in the same part of CSX's territory with its nose decorated in chassis colors. The last I heard, it had been moved down to Waycross. Okay, I said this last time and I'll say it again. It's not for me to decide if this was the right or wrong thing to do or if this locomotive should be painted back into CSX colors. I should mention that trespassing and vandalism are against the law. That being said, the appearance of another unsanctioned heritage unit is certainly an interesting development and one of the more unusual stories in railroad news this year.